I'm so happy to welcome into the conversation as we talk about Target here, Gerald Storch. He is the former CEO of the company. So he knows a thing or two about all this. And we've been watching, of course, the stock price decline significantly. Obviously, Jerry, there are some PR issues that we'll get to in a moment going on. But ahead of that, let's just back up for a second, because this is a company that it strikes me has like one big giant mess that it's sitting on, not just from a PR perspective, but I mean, you look at the theft numbers that they came out with recently. You also look at those earnings numbers, which were, I guess, okay. But when you compare them to competitors like Walmart, as you predicted, by the way, ahead of earnings, they're not looking so hot. Your take on Target right now?
Sure, Tricia. First of all, I wasn't CEO at Target. I was vice chairman.
Forgive me.
A bunch of other retailers like Toys R Us and Hudson Bay that owns Saks Fifth Avenue and a lot of other retailers. But regardless,
no, don't forgive me. That is correct. And I remember you at all of those places and some wonderful interviews we did back in the day at Bloomberg Television with my good friend Adam Johnson.
Yeah, I always love talking to you. Very smart.
Yeah.
So look, Target's had a lot of problems, and their stock has been struggling for a long time, for over a year, and they're down 12% year to date as we sit here right now. And their most recent decline actually began when both Target and Walmart released earnings, and the comparison was not flattering to Target. And so this is the first quarter earnings that ended at the end of April, and what you saw is Target's sales were flat when Walmart's were up 7%. And so that's a fundamental issue of performance of the business. And so what's going on there is that the consumer is very stressed, and during difficult times, consumers buy necessities like food, health and beauty care products, and Walmart's far stronger in those areas, plus has a far stronger value emphasis. So ever since both chains began, and they began in the same year, historical fact, in 1961, during good times, Target does better. During times when consumers are stressed, Walmart does better. This is a time when Target is doing much worse than Walmart. And that's why the stock is falling. That's why most of the analysts have downgraded the stock, is because of the relative performance of the two companies.
Why is it doing so poorly? I mean, it's a big, broad question there, but what's your sort of overall view?
Some of it's just the times we're in. Target also emphasizes apparel, for example, and this is not a time when people are buying discretionary products like clothing in large numbers. So some of it's just the positioning of the companies and the times that we're in. Also, there are some big execution issues at Target. Ever since their peak in the middle of the pandemic, Target has been having a lot of difficulties getting their inventory balanced correctly. They've been much slower to fix that than their competitors have. They're out of stock on a lot of products that they didn't, used to be in stock on. You used to be able to count on Target to have the product that you wanted. They feel a little off strategy to me, in the sense that they're putting products in the aisles, whereas before they prided themselves on a clean, inviting atmosphere with wide open aisles. There's a lot of promotional activity going on in Target, sort of BOGOs, our listeners know that.
BOGOs? For those of us not in the know.
Which doesn't sound like Target. It undermines the price integrity of the chain. And also there are lines when you go to check out, which there never used to be at Target. And so, it was sort of this sort of sense of seamless shopping, that really made Target do quite well. So there's a lot of economy-wide pressures on Target right now. And there are a lot of specific issues where the company has some work to do.
Well, it sounds like, to me, this is kind of a management issue. I know in having spoken with you in the past that you were pretty hands-on, and in your role at the company really took things like inventory very, very seriously. You had a meeting once a week early in the morning, I believe, to address the inventory issues. You now tell me they have inventory issues. I mean, is this an algorithm thing, or is this just nobody really minding the store, literally?
Look, the management there has a fine reputation. Brian Cornell did great for many years at Target until he hit the recent bumps there. I'm not inside the company. I can't see the numbers, don't know what's going on a day-to-day basis. But there are certainly some fundamental issues with the business that did not used to exist.
Brian Cornell, CEO now of the company. And again, as we look at the stock price, having lost quite a bit of ground, I mean, upwards of $12 billion really just in the last couple of weeks. Now, I know a lot of people, especially in conservative media, want to put it on this particular product, a few particular products, and some of the pride displays going on, and that's part of it. But we're talking again with a former executive there at the company, Jerry Storch, who has a lot of reasons why he thinks that this company is challenged right now, including whether or not it can keep up in this economy, and also the sort of tactic overall, whether it be managing inventory, having messy aisles, and long checkout lines. Jerry, you throw in what just happened, and from a PR perspective, they're dealing with that battle, and they seem to have kind of made everyone mad, whether you are all for, LGBTQ, or whether you are not for it, or whether you're just somebody who's kind of in the middle that says, wait a second, why do I have to even think about this when I go shopping? So from a PR perspective, what do they do now? Are they finding themselves a little bit like Bud Light?
Well, I think there are some key differences in those cases, but the in the Bud Light case, it just seems like a profound lack of understanding of their customer and fundamental principles of marketing. And so you try to think about who you're trying to appeal to, what's the customer segment you're going after, and you make sure that you do that. It feels like they were trying it, but in the Bud Light case, to extend their brand to places that it didn't go. They were trying to push the edge, if you will, to expand the audience into areas that didn't fit with the brand profile of Budweiser. And they should have done that with other brands of beer, not with the same brand of beer. And so there's nothing wrong with trying to expand your audience. Just think about how you're doing that. And so what they did in the process was they offended their core audience. It appears a very way that has had more legs than I think a lot of people thought it might. It continues to this day. So that was a fundamental sort of almost, I hate to use it's almost like marketing malpractice. They weren't thoughtful about how they were going after their segments and how to do that overall. In the case of Target, Target has been offering Pride merchandise for a very long time and has been, like many retailers, an active uh, supporter of Pride Month. And it's not just Target. Walmart has a big Pride display. So does Kohl's. So does Macy's. So does Penny's. Almost every retailer does this, and Target's been doing it for a long time. It feels like in this case, maybe they didn't vet the products quite as carefully as they had in the past, or as other retailers are doing, just to make sure they understood what was offensive to people and what wasn't. When you go there,
Do they typically vet them? I mean, I'm curious about that. Like, what would be the
sure,
process? Like
well,
when you were
you
there?
should vet every product. We have line reviews where you go through every product and you talk about them. And not just in this area, it could be in almost any area. You could say, well, that's a little too much. You went too far with that one. Where people are always trying to push the boundaries of what's in and what's out. And we make decisions about this in all kinds of areas, not just in this area, but whether related to anything that could potentially be controversial. You think through it, whether or not it's really worth it, because we want to love everybody. You have love for people on sort of on all sides of an issue, people everywhere, and so you want to show that in what you do. So you think about both the people you're trying to support as well as people that might be offended by what you're trying to do.
And then maybe you should
like
bring
you
your
said,
inventory people in and say, well, wait a second, like how many of these are we really going to sell? Like how big of an audience are we really going to reach with this? Because otherwise you're going to be left with a whole lot of inventory in a specific swimsuit line.
I'm sure they didn't buy very much of this, to be honest with you. This is more a matter of just showing support, as all retailers do. And so clearly Target made some mistakes here in what they put in the assortment and how they dealt with it after the fact, or else they wouldn't have been singled out go to any retailer and you will see Pride merchandise today.
Sure.
So it's really the nature of a few of the products and the way that their response was handled. And the answer has to be the same general principle that I mentioned before. And people say, what are you talking about there? But show love. That's what you have to do. Think about your entire audience and say, how do I show love? And so that always has worked for me. I remember a time when I was at Toys R Us, and we owned Babies R Us, and that we had the first Baby of the Year contest, and the first baby turned out to be born to an undocumented immigrant. And according to the rules of the contest, they shouldn't get the prize because they didn't have a tax ID number or something. And people were up in arms on all sides of it. And so we thought about, what do we do about this? And I mean, you know what? The second Baby of the Year too, that's a good baby too. So we gave everybody, both of them, the two babies, the prize for, it's really for their future education. And we put out a big press release. We love all babies. And
Aw.
it ended instantly. Who doesn't love babies? We love all babies.
Yeah.
Another
Well, that's a
case.
good solution. Like, you used to be over at the State Department. Listen,
Right.
I mean,
Well,
this is a problem for corporate America, though, is it not? I mean, how do you dodge these landmines? I mean, they keep coming up. And you got to be able to kind of almost make everyone happy and not get too political.
Well, I think you have to have sincerity. And so I always remind people that whether it's our employees, whether it's our customers, and whether it's our community, that this country is pretty divided right now. And so anything you do, it should be real. It should be sincere, not an attempt to demonstrate something else, but it should be doing what you think you should be should be doing. And so that should be the guiding principle. And wherever possible, you just try to keep out of politics altogether. Because, and I would say, separate what you think individually, because you or I may think different things. You know, most of the country, if you look at the polls, seem to be somewhat more socially liberal and fiscally conservative. But we never have choices like that in, you know, our political choices. So given that makeup, how do you handle it? I remember we had a forum, again, back at Toys R Us, which is based in New Jersey. And we had Governor Chris Christie come to speak. And so he spoke, and people were polite. They loved it. They liked having him there. And, you know, New Jersey, generally, a little bit of a blue state, if not purple. So then we had Cory Booker come. Cory Booker's a very interesting man, but, you know, on the other side. And so we brought both of them. And that way we were not taking sides, but yet we weren't trying to pretend like we didn't live in this world.
No, no. I mean, there are solutions. I think you got to have thoughtful people at the top. What's the fate of Brian Cornell here? What would be your number one piece of advice for him at this moment in time?
Well, again, I just like always is to focus on the performance of the business is, you know, critical. They're having a lot of trouble right now. I think he knows what to do about that, and just roll up the sleeves and get to work on that. As far as this issue, again, I'm not inside. I don't see what's going on with sales, the boycotts, so I don't really have the facts to say what to do. But I would look for ways again to show love to everybody. Start with that principle, and the answer will come to you. I mean, I've thought of things like, well, maybe they should have this one month and then another month. You know, have merchandise. You know, that's very, you know, for example, very patriotic. We have July 4th coming up, so emphasize that in a very, very meaningful way. You have Labor Day coming up. You have back to school coming up. Maybe you have things. You know, what else are people interested in that might show support? You know, for everybody. Target has a history, by the way, of supporting. You know, sort of. You know, I remember when I was there were Christian causes, and so you had Amy Grant was a big with Target doing a lot of recordings and all. So there's maybe you know, rely on that a little bit, some of that, but not as like the main focus of the store. I'm just saying you don't have to hide. You know, it's not that, but you don't have to take sides either. So you look for a way. I'll come back to that. You know, we love all babies. Okay, we love everyone. We want to start with that in a very sincere way. It's not BS. You know, so how do you do that?
Yeah, no, good advice. Well, I look forward to having you back on because there's other industry concerns, I think, in retail, and it's changing quickly. We didn't even get a chance to talk about some of the theft issues, which I think are pretty real. But, you know, what is the technology, for example, of the future to help some of these companies address those concerns? I'd love to have you back. But Jerry, I so appreciate your time today. And I think this is very, very good advice for anyone in corporate America right now confronting these challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.